Welcome to How to Be a Person, a podcast about life with me, your host, Giuliano Grimaudo. Josh, what's going on, man?
Giuliano, good to be here. Good to be here.
Thank you so much for joining me, man. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Great to have you. So, I always say this at the beginning of every episode that we have never met before, right? We talked for maybe like 60 seconds before this just about technical stuff. But that's the way I like to do it. What inspired me to get this podcast started was like over a decade I've been driving Uber, and, people get in my car and I have conversations with them, and the conversations I had always just really surprised me, like how good they were. And I never had prepared anything with those people. I'm like, I want to just meet you and talk to you right here on the spot. So here we are.
Hey, so let me just say something. That's really
ahead.
Interesting because I'm a salesperson, so I'm sure we're going to talk about a bunch of different things. But I've told my wife many times that I think my retirement plan is going to include driving Uber because I love meeting people randomly. I love random conversation. I love driving, and I love exploring and getting to know my city better. So I feel like we're kindred spirits here, man.
It sounds perfect for you.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. It's been really interesting, right? Like I said, I've been doing it for over a decade now. When I first started driving Uber, that was when people were like, what's Uber? Right. And then when I tell them, they're like, you let strangers in your car?
Yeah.
Right. That's how long I've been driving for Uber. But it's always been like that for me. Like I think back, and that's literally how it's always been. And what's cool is that I've had a lot of passengers also, like before they get out, they're like, this was like the best Uber ride ever. I can't believe we talked about all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. And so, basically 10 years too late on getting started on this podcast.
Better late than never, man. You're ahead of the curve with Uber, a little behind the curve with podcasts. It's all good.
That's it. All right, cool. So for myself and also for anybody who's listening, Josh, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us what you do, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, amazing. So my name is Josh Flower. I'm 51 years old, and I'm a family man. I've been married for 25 years. I've got a couple kids, both adults now. So 22-year-old son and an 18-year-old daughter. And I've been a professional salesperson for 24 years. So a really long time. And I'm quite good at it, obviously. I mean, anything that you do for that period of time, hopefully you're decent at it. So I had a bit of a moment when I was approaching my 50th birthday, Giuliano, where I just started wondering, is this really what my story is? Like just being great at sales and, selling more stuff, or is there more to life for me? And frankly, there were a lot of things that I'd been neglecting up to that point as well, like my health. I had a bunch of vices, drinking, weed, stuff like that, that was, I think, holding me back from being the person that I really, thought that I could be. And so approaching my 50th birthday was a big thing for me, where I thought, I think it's time to change. I think it's time to drop my bad habits, introduce some good habits, maybe start doing something that's a little more challenging than just selling more stuff. And that's what led me to the path that I'm on currently. I'm sure we'll talk more about it.
Yeah. Wow. There's so much about what you said that I have so many questions. The first thing I want to, no, it's amazing. It's amazing. So here's something that just popped in my head about what you said. Because I think a lot of times people will, let's say, disparage the idea of, like, for example, New Year's resolutions, right? When it comes up on a new year and you're like, all right, people are setting their New Year's resolutions and then they don't stick to it. It's just some made up thing, right? The first of the year is not really a thing. Like, it's just ultimately another day you're existing. But the fact of the matter is that, like, as human beings, whether or not in the universe January 1st means anything, to a human being, like, it really does make a difference. Like, there are milestones in your life that when you come up on them, it gives you perspective. And so I think that's really cool what you shared about turning 50. Like, it made you stop and go like, wow, is this really what I want to keep doing? Now, what I'm interested in too is, because you were saying that you had some vices in sales. You know what? Before we get into what you're doing next, let's talk a little bit more about the sales thing. You said you've been in sales for 25 years. How did you get into sales in the first place?
Yeah, you bet. So I worked a bunch of dead end jobs. Like, I think like most young people, I started with a paper route, and then I was stocking shelves, and then I was pumping gas. And then I decided, I want to do white collar
Wait,
stuff.
pumping gas. How old are you?
Yeah. I'm telling you, man, I'm old. And like doing oil changes and stuff like that, and like changing tires. And then I realized, I'm a white collar dude, I think, at heart. So I got a job in a bank, right? Which was like the opposite of working in a garage.
At least you can admit it.
Yeah. I just knew.
It's okay, man. Me too, dude. Me too. My dad is in construction, and he can just go, like, he loves it, right? He loves like working hard. And for me, don't get me wrong, I love working hard. But I love working hard up in here. That's my thing, it's different. Yeah.
And you know what? Much respect to anyone that does, works with their hands, but it just wasn't for me. I'm not a handy guy, and it just I felt like a fish out of water. So once I got into the white collar world, it seemed to really stick with me more. But then I bounced around a bunch of cubicle hell jobs after college, doing different things. And I'll tell you, you're having a laugh at my age. It was a newspaper ad that I read. So back in the days when there were newspapers laying around. Wow. Yeah. And I picked one up, and I was looking through it, and I saw this ad that said something like unlimited income opportunity. And I'll tell you, that spoke to me. All right. It spoke to me. So I thought, let me look into this. And of course, all my colleagues in the cubicle environment were like, Josh, don't do it. You've got a stable job here. Don't go to the dark side of commission income. And I said, screw this. I want to earn more money, and I hate it here. So I took the leap, and I'll tell you, man, it was about 2 weeks in that I realized this is my calling. Like, this is what I meant to do.
Wow.
And ended up like winning Rookie of the Year at this new company. And I sold the biggest deal in the company's history, like in the first 9 months. And it was for me, man. know, and so now it's been coming up. It'll be 25 years this summer that I've been in professional sales. So kind of crazy.
Yeah. Well, I love okay, so part of the reason why I originally asked like how you got into it is because of exactly what you said that your coworker said to you, right? Like so many people are afraid of sales, like being in it, but also being sold to. Because it feels that people are like, oh, it's weird, it's slimy, you can't rely on it, all this stuff. But like you were like, look, I need to try it. Like I need to like at least come on, man, unlimited money.
Yeah. Wow. Right.
Well, and I mean, obviously, if you've been in it for 25 years, you're good at it. Like, unlimited is kind of a big word, but it's kind of accurate.
It's true, man. Like the richest salespeople in the world, and I'm not one of them, but I'm certainly successful. Like I'm
sure.
So just to give you a sense, so I sell software and technology now to businesses, and in my space, there are probably over 1,000 vendors that are competing for business. And I've won like top 3 rep in the entire industry for multiple years. So
wow.
I'm quite successful. Excuse me.
Yeah.
And, but here's the thing that I think you're right. People are sort of turned off by the idea of sales and being sold to, because I think we've all had an experience with a slimy salesperson, or where someone knocked on the door and they were fast talking and we weren't that comfortable with it. And like, we've all been there, right? Yeah. I remember going to a used car lot and they tried to get me to sign some contract that said that they wouldn't refund my deposit if I didn't buy the car. A used car lot,
bro. That's like the perfect example.
Right? Like just slime bucket central. Yeah. So we've all been there, but the best salespeople in the world are here to serve people and solve problems. Like that's really the philosophy you've got to bring in as a true professional in this space is, number one, I like people. I want to help them solve their problems. And yes, I want to get paid in the process, but that's the way any good relationship works, right? The bigger the problems that you solve, the more you're going to get paid. And so I really just took that on as my mantra.
Yeah.
And that's the way I feel when I interact with someone. I think to myself, this person is lucky to be working with me because I care about them. And if I can't serve them, I'm going to figure that out as quickly as possible.
Yeah,
but if I can serve them, we are going to roll, and I am going to find a way to convince them that they need to do business with me. And that's
absolutely,
I think, what you want.
Well, I love that you said that too, because it really is about like professionalism. So the thing with sales, just like you said, you saw an ad and then you just did it, right? Like anybody can basically get into sales. Like there's always a sales job available.
That's fact. My son's coming into the job market right now, and that's what I told him. I'm like, every single company that you're thinking about or that you're looking at, they all need salespeople, and they will hire based on talent and potential. You know, every now and then they're going to want to see credentials, but for entry level sales jobs, you just need to have a willing attitude, and be prepared to put yourself out there. Really,
exactly. Well, but that's the reason why you will have there's such a wide spectrum of salespeople, right? You have people who pride themselves on being a true professional, who, like you said, like, I'm going to find out if I can even help you in the first place before I'm trying to sell you anything, right? Like, my goal is exactly. And a true professional is going to do that. Like, they're not going to try to force something on you if they don't think it's actually going to help you, right? But then again, you have the other side of the spectrum where it's like you have someone with zero. You could be the first person they're ever trying to sell something to, and you would have no idea, right? Well, I mean, you might tell by the way that they're selling to you, but that's the point, right? Like, you don't know, and it's hard to like wrap your mind around it, I think, if you've never been in sales. But like, sales makes the world go round. Like, you don't realize it, but it does. Like, you're like, not you. Obviously, you know this, right? But for the average person, like, they go, oh, that's someone who's trying to push something on me. And obviously, I'm saying this because I have experience in sales too. I don't talk about it very often, but like, I've spent a lot of time thinking about this. And so you hear so many people who are like, if a product's good, it'll sell itself. Like, it should just be on the shelf. And it's like, bro, you don't understand. Like, the entire world revolves around sales. Like, everything that exists because a salesperson sold it, you know?
It really does. And I'll tell you that this is why salespeople are so well paid, because it is the bridge that makes business happen. And this is also why, if you're a person sitting there confused and upset about what's happening with AI and you're trying to figure out what the future holds for you, I'll tell you, nobody can predict the future. But one thing I do know is that people are going to buy from people, and the relationship does matter. And feeling like the entity that you're buying from has empathy for you and truly is understanding what your problems are, like, that's not going to go away. And so if you're looking for something that's as AI proof as it can get, and who knows if that's even, AI is pretty brilliant, right?
Right. Who knows?
But for the time being, I'd say, you can bet on this profession.
For sure. You know what I'm curious about? Because I've, like I said, I have experience in sales, and I've kind of done like kind of all kinds of sales. I've sold cars. I've sold electricity.
You've done it.
I've sold life insurance. I've sold watches. I mean, I could go on and on. I've dabbled in so many different types of sales. What I'm curious of is like what your experience was when it came to rejection. And I'm sorry, also, like, you came on here, I'm like, do you coach sales now, or are you doing something totally different?
Yeah. No, it's a great question. So just to quickly answer that, I am in coaching now. I do coach sales, but I coach a broader mindset program, because what I observed in my career, and certainly in my selling career, Giuliano, and just in life, is that really mindset is everything. And this as someone that's sold as well. It's all about your attitude going into whatever it is that you're doing. This is the biggest limiting factor for most people. So I teach broader mindset around how to change any bad habit, introduce any good habit as quickly as possible, turn your life around. But sales is a big part of my message. So that's, well,
I can't wait to dive into that.
Nice.
So, nice. But tell me about rejection. Like, what was that like for you when you first got into it? Because I think regardless, anybody who's watching, whether they're in sales or not, like, you're going to deal with rejection in your life. So I'd love to hear about like what 100%. Your experience was with it.
So this is what I would say to anybody. Okay. If you want to be successful, you need to be in front of people. So you can hide away, and you can do a job, and you can do that privately, maybe even do it from home, but you're not going to be extremely successful. You'll possibly be able to pay your bills, but you've got to decide, if you want to be a successful person, you need to get out in front of people, because people is where the money's at. Right. And so, and where your opportunity to help is at. So you got to get in front of people. And if you're going to be in front of people, I promise you're going to make mistakes and you're going to fail sometimes. So you have to learn how to accept failure in front of other people. It's just a reality. So decide now, do you want success? And if you do, realize that you're going to need to fail publicly. So the sooner you can accept that, then the sooner you can go out there and just eat your crap sandwich, for lack of a better term. And you know, like, do you remember your first sales job? Because I remember, man, I remember being given a script and being given a list of names, and it's like, you don't leave the building until you've called every single one of these. And I remember one night, okay, and my first manager, a good mentor of mine, still a friend to this day, I had to make 30 calls, and I was at 27, but it was after 6 p.m. And I was like, hey, Steve, so I got to 27. I'll just wrap these ones up in the morning. He's like, nope, sit down. You got 3 more calls to make. And it was like, okay. So hard work, but just grunting through it. Yeah. And I'll pause in a second here, Juliana, but I'm going to let everybody else know another area that I'm failing right now.
Okay.
So, you know, I still fail in my sales career, but I'm so used to it. I know I take it in stride. I get a big failure, I keep moving. It doesn't even throw me off my game.
Yeah.
I promote my coaching services through Instagram, and I do so with short form videos, talking head videos that I record myself. If you want to slice a humble pie, start recording videos every single day that everyone in your life that you've ever met can watch and scrutinize and tell you what they think or ignore your content. It's the hardest thing in the world. And it's just, I just do it every single day with a smile on my face because I'm failing publicly, because I know that's how I'm going to be successful. So that's my lesson for everybody.
Yeah, no, 100%. Oh my gosh, man. I feel like so I'm not even where I want to get to yet. Okay. Like as far as where I want to get in my life, but there are parts of my life right now that I look at and I'm like, I could not have imagined them being as amazing as they are. Like if you had like rewind 10 years and someone goes, this part of your life, what do you want it to look like? Like I could not have even imagined how good it is right now. And right. Yes, I'm super grateful. Okay. But I say this because those parts of my life, I'm only where I am right now because of the fact that I was willing to look stupid. Like I was willing to get rejected, and I was willing for other people to see that and to know about it and to judge me for it. And so for me, what I will say is that one-on-one, okay, in sales, one-on-one, rejection was very hard for me. I did not deal well with rejection. But public rejection, like let's say doing something, posting stuff online, because I do the same thing. Like that is something that has always been okay to me. I'm just like, well, everyone's gonna think I'm like stupid. I don't really care because this is what I want, you know?
So interesting.
I'm curious, like when you first got into sales, what your first role was, and like, did you ever deal with that? Like sorry, let me preface this just a little bit more. There are different sales jobs that I've had where there was outbound where like I'm reaching out to people, and then there's inbound where it was just a call was set up for me and I just show up at the call. And so there's obviously a vast difference between doing those types of sales. So that's part of the reason why I'm asking, like, did you ever have a sales job where you were cold calling, dealing with like a super high volume of rejection? I know you mentioned that list earlier, and what your experience was like with that.
100%. And it's interesting that you make that delineation, because maybe it's been so long since I did that kind of job, but I found the Instagram stuff to be harder, like the public failure stuff that you mentioned. Whereas when I first started this job, like my wife and I were trying to have a family. I knew that I needed to make more money than I was making in my various cubicle held jobs. So I just set it in my mind that I had to become successful at this. So yeah, I was doing outbound calling to people that were not expecting my call.
Gotcha.
And I was just getting a ton of rejection, just a ton of rejection. And if I really think back and put myself there, yeah, that was really hard. Yeah. And you know, something else that happened. I was working in one of those old school bullpen style environments. If you can picture 12 dudes, right? And just, we're all sitting in desks in this big room, just pounding out calls and then shooting the shit about the stories that were happening. Yep. And I had this script that I was reading off of, and I was pronouncing a word wrong, and nobody corrected me for a week. They let me keep making the mistake. And then I think on the Friday, they were like, hey, Josh, you know, but they'd let me from Monday through Friday make the mistake with the script. So I just learned to accept that sort of rejection and failure and just keep getting better. That was my goal every single day, is just come in, try and do better, try and work a little harder,
Yeah.
keep the faith that it's going to get better. But, and that's, you know, Giuliano, that's what stops people, right? Is they're afraid of something at the conceptual level, like sales seems slimy, or like I could never do it. But if you can just force yourself to do something that makes you uncomfortable, it will demystify quickly, because you'll get better at it.
Sure.
You know, I say for most people, just give it 2 good weeks and you'll see, like, the tides will start to turn and you'll start to feel a little bit better about it. 30 days, you'll be humming. So I don't know about you. How long did it take you to get over that sort of pain, if you will?
It's a good question. I never did. So this is part of the reason why I'm not. It's why I'm still in
sales jobs. Though.
I'm still see. This is what's so funny. Like I never wanted to give up on it. That was kind of my thing. Was I kept trying different. Like so this is what I'll say. I agree with you. I think that to a certain extent, anybody can do anything if they just like keep trying. But one of the other things that I stand behind now is this idea of accepting yourself. And I don't mean in the sense of like, just accept that you suck at this. That's not what I mean, but maybe accept that your strengths are different than someone else's strengths, and not necessarily weaknesses, right? It's not a focus on weakness. It's on my strength might be different than someone else's strength, because I have seen guys who go through super high levels of rejection in sales and they just love it, bro. They eat it up. Yeah. Like when you're in the chat and they're like, oh man, someone just told me off. I'm ready to go, man. And they get on another call. And like for me, someone tells me off and I'm like, I think I'm going to take the rest of the day off.
Yeah. Let me go get a drink.
Like that's just, I mean, man, and I could not get past that. And that was part of the reason why I asked about like outbound versus inbound, because for me, I got to a point where I realized, wait a second, if I'm having a conversation with someone who like already had that cold, you know, conversation with another person, I'm really friggin' good at this. So people would come in and like, so for example, there was my wife and I have a network marketing business as well. And there was a point where we had like one of our Instagram pages. My wife and I are really big on social media. Not big as in big audiences. I mean, we're just really big on that concept. We've had several accounts and done a bunch of stuff. So there was one of our accounts that we had that had a lot of followers, and we were just posting like, hey, we've got this opportunity. If anyone's interested, let us know. And we would just send them to our calendar and people book themselves. And then we would get on the call. And I was closing like, I don't know, like 60%, like consistently, right? Which if anyone's listening and doesn't know, 60% is a good closing rate. It's really good. Right? It's not just like, oh, that's pretty good. It's really good. So that was like a little piece that I noticed, right? And then at one point I was doing life insurance and I would buy leads and call them, and people were like so angry. Like, I didn't give my info for this, even though I was like, how would I have gotten your number anyway? Right. But it was just all this rejection, and man, that was tough. And then I was like, let me just try out these live transfers, right? Where someone else is doing the cold calling. And then once the person's ready to talk, they send it over to me. And it was the same thing. As soon as it came to me, I'm having these conversations. I'm closing at like a super high rate. And I was like, this is so easy.
But I'll tell you what, you're a real salesperson though, man, because like, honestly, the cold calling stuff, that's badge of honor stuff that everyone says, oh, to be a salesperson, you got to do that. Yeah, we all got to earn our stripes for sure. But the best salespeople in the world are not cold calling, because cold calling is actually a marketing function. You're casting out a net and seeing who may be interested in buying. Real selling is taking people that are curious, some degree of curious, and turning them into happy, willing customers. So I'd actually suggest you're a natural salesperson. But I just wanted to circle back on the comment that you made about strengths and skill sets. I could not agree more, because I do think we have this thing in society where we say, hey, you can do anything. And it's a really nice platitude, but like, can you do anything in the physical world? Like, can you play in the NBA if you can't jump and you can't,
You're like, not exactly.
5'9", like there's guys that have done it, but is that a realistic, And so I did not have an aptitude for working with my hands. My dad tried to teach me. My grandfather was a woodworker. It just never made sense to me. I saw other guys come into the garage when I was still struggling with stuff, and they would pick it up immediately, and they just were natural at it. So I couldn't agree more. Keep looking. If something doesn't feel right, if it's and there should be some challenge for sure.
Sure.
But if you feel like a fish out of water,
Yeah.
maybe it's not for you. There's no shame in admitting that,
Yeah. Well, so first of all, I love what you said about the cold calling being separate from sales. And it's such a good point because it really is a different skill set.
It is truly.
And it makes so much sense. And it goes in line with the next part about people having different strengths, where like for you, you're like, man, it's scary, right? For me to be uploading stuff and like knowing people are watching it and some people leave nasty comments and all that. And for me, I'm like, whatever, like that's not a big deal to me. It's not a challenge. But it might be reversed the other way. You're like, yeah, whatever, man. You just deal with the cold call rejection. I'm like, no problem. I just keep trucking along. Like it's whatever. Whereas for me, it was devastating,
That's it. We have different resiliencies,
Yes. Yeah. And like, it's like different strengths in different things. And I think that's important for people to recognize. And I say this not because I feel like you should just give up on something, but it's like you said, there is a certain amount of challenge associated. Like when you're working hard at something that you have a like natural inclination for, but it's not the same, right? Like when I look back at like when I was doing cold calling and that was really hard for me, I'm not going to sit here and say like I couldn't have gotten more used to it. But what I will say is that like I could not use a better word than devastating. Like it literally, like I would shut down. Like someone would tell me off and I was joking before about crying. I didn't actually cry, but I would just be like, I'm not working the rest of the day. I can't, like, I need to recover from that. Right. Yeah. But like when there's something that I'm working on that like lights a fire in me and that I kind of have a natural inclination for, but I'm like working hard at like getting better at it. That thing is a different kind of hard. Like it is hard, but it's a different kind. And it's funny because like when I look back on those guys who like got a bunch of rejection and they were like fueled to keep going, and then they would sit there and brag about how like, oh man, like I'm so good at like rejection and blah, blah, blah. Like it makes whatever, right? They're like bragging about it. I realize that some people who brag about working hard, I'm like, once I found the things that for me that when I work really hard, it's that different kind of hard.
Yeah.
I realized that's what those guys were doing. That's their like fulfilling hard. And so for them, like they're bragging about it, but now I look at it and I'm like, dude, that kind of hard is like the best hard. And it's not even hard. You're just like, it just feels good,
It does. But you really nailed it in that. And like, this is why, like, if you're a younger person listening to this, just try different things.
Yes.
Just try it because you can't know until you try it. You're not going to know what is like truly hard and impossible and what is not. And don't take it personally if you find something that is not for you. Just be like, hey, the universe has helped me realize this, and now I'm going to pivot and do something else. But then the older that you get, you want to really be figuring out what it is for you and not keep making those same mistakes over and over again. So if you're, I'd say for most young people, give a shot, try sales, see what you think. You may surprise yourself, or you may realize this is not for me and I got to go find something else to do. Yeah. And it'll be equally as hard, but it'll be your hard, like you were saying, really, I really like that, man.
Thanks. I appreciate that. But it's interesting. I totally agree with that. I think that people have to see, this is why I say I balance it out, because I don't think you should give up on something just because it's hard. But I do think that people need to trust themselves when it comes to the type of hard that it is. Right? Like if you go into it and you feel that, like what I said about like, you're like, this is devastating to you. Like it's okay, right? It's okay. Accept that maybe this is not your type of hard, and know that there is a type of hard that's out there that actually gives you energy. That's what I was just saying that. I forget who I was just saying this to, but I started this podcast like 3 years ago, and I did like 10 episodes and dropped it. And I just started getting back to it like literally a week ago, and I'm just like back to back doing episodes. And this is, for me, is like my hard that like it feels so good. Like every day I'm just doing a podcast, and some people, like my wife is not a talker like I am, right? For her, it's like exhausting to talk to someone. For me, like I'm going to get off this call and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go do something amazing, because it just gives me energy. And like, yes, it's work, but it gives me energy. So I'm saying all this to say that like, if you come across a hard, that is too hard, right? Just know that there is another type of hard out there, and you just have to find it, because that hard, even though it is hard, is fulfilling and can actually give you energy and not make you feel like totally wiped out after.
Amazing. And there's two things that I would say to that. Number one is like we were saying before, is try different stuff. Try different stuff. Try different side hustles as well. Like most people that are successful with a side hustle try one thing and then that doesn't work, and then they try another thing. Like there's no shame in starting. Like you hear people say, oh, don't give up, don't ever quit. No, screw that. If something is not right for you, drop it as quickly as possible and move on to the next thing. But here's the other thing: is trust your conscience. Get in touch with the little voice inside your head, because it's steering you all the time towards the things that you want to do. This is a part of my coaching practice as well, where I get my clients to really, there's a couple components to it, but one thing that I have them do is something called a regret reflection, where in the morning you think back to the previous day and see, like, what are the things that I regret from yesterday, and realizing that regret is not a choice. It's just a feeling that you have. And you will begin to get answers about, you shouldn't have eaten that food. You should have done this. Why didn't you work as hard as you could have? Like, why did you screw off and watch those videos for 2 hours? You'll get your answers, but that little voice can also guide you if you ask questions about the path that you're on. Now, again, if you're very young, do stuff. That's going to be the way to learn. But as you get older, more mature, and have experience, you can start, if you can build a relationship with yourself, you in your heart and soul know what is right for you. So the more you can get in touch with that, the better your life is going to be. It really will.
Yeah. Well, I love what you said about trying different things, because that really is how you get feedback. Like, that's the only way you're going to figure it out, is just by trying stuff. And see, I say this because I know, like, a lot of people and a lot of kids, right, when they're in school and they're like, you got to pick what you're going to do. And, you go and get your degree and you're supposed to go into that job. And it's like, bro, I cannot tell you. I literally don't even remember every job I've had. I can't remember it, because for me, I was like, I would try something and I'd be like, I don't think this is for me. Goodbye. Right. And I would go and like try another job and try another job. And even some jobs that I enjoyed, I still would reach a ceiling and I'd be like, okay, I know how to do this. I'm good at it and I'm bored. So goodbye.
Yeah.
Right. And I would go do something else. The way I look at it is almost like I'm trying to be like a scientist of life. I'm just going to keep experimenting. Yeah. And that's like, for me, what's gotten me to where I am is like, I've just done a bunch of shit. Like, that's it. I just done as much as I possibly could. Like, if I were to list out all the places I've worked, all the things I've done, it's almost like, you're like, what is this guy doing?
Yeah. No, but that's beautiful. I love that, because there's also a courage in that, right? It's like, you're not just resting on your laurels. You're not just accepting that, hey, I'm good at something, or maybe there's a future in this, even though it doesn't really like light a fire under me. Keep it moving, keep looking. And Giuliano, that's where I got to in my sales career. And incidentally, I'm still gainfully employed at the company that I'm with. I have an ownership stake in the company. So It's a good situation, because I still get to practice the skill that I'm so good at. And our products are always evolving because it's technology. So it's never like, I'm not selling widgets, I'm selling evolving products and services, which is really fun.
Because it's tech, right? You said?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's tech.
Yeah.
But I just got to this point where I'm like, I went to college for social work, and I thought, I want to help people, like that's always been there for me. I want to help people. And now I've got this life experience and this family and career and everything that I've done. I'm really at a point where I can help people with the things that I've learned. So let me pivot and do something new on the side.
Yeah.
And it's the best. No, don't ever stop. I don't care how old you are. If you have a desire to do something different, go learn it.
Yes.
One of the best things that's happened in my life has been taking on and this as a podcaster and a person in the social space, the amount of learning you have to go through, just how to use all the different apps and how to edit your stuff and how to, promote it, and then how to write better content. And it's amazing. It has breathed new life into me, man. So try stuff, people,
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because you mentioned about courage, and I was like, I am courageous. But I was thinking about it, and that only comes from having done that so many times, right? So like in the beginning, when I first was like, well, let me try this.
You were
like
probably petrified.
Yeah. I'm sitting here thinking about the very first job I had. And then when
what was it?
This was I was a dishwasher
at
a pizza place.
Too. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, mine was an Italian restaurant, not a pizza specifically, but yeah, I watched.
Well, yeah, actually, I guess it was more of an Italian restaurant than it was a pizza place. I always just say it was a pizza place.
Amazing.
Did we work at the same place? Just kidding. That would be crazy.
Terrible job.
Yeah, now I'm trying to remember what that place was called too, because I'm thinking about it. I don't remember now.
I remember my place. It was called Hunter's Crossing. I'll never forget it.
Oh, okay.
They told me it was $5 an hour, and then when I got the paycheck, it was $4.50. I couldn't believe that they lied to me. You know?
Yeah. So I think about that, and then I'm like, what was my second job? I think my second job was when I worked at Starbucks for a little bit. And what was interesting, I'm only bringing that up because I'm thinking whenever you are like going to try something new, or maybe you're abandoning something behind you to try something new, like that's scary, right? It's almost like, it's like you're jumping across like this little canyon, you know what I mean? And it's like you can't go back. Like you're jumping across, and once you land over there, like you're not coming back, you know? And I guess I'm saying all this to say that the more times you do that, like the easier it is to continue doing it.
Yes.
But I look back and I think of like some people in my life, and there's no judgment here or anything, because I think everyone's on their own path, and sometimes the timing is just different for them, right? Just like you were like, I turned 50, and that was when like I realized I want to like focus more on like impact and like how I can help people, and that's fine. So there's no judgment whatsoever, but I do look and I compare, because I think, man, I'm still not where I want to be yet, and look at how many iterations I've had to go through. And then I think about some people I know, and I'm like, bro, they've been through like 2 iterations. Yes. Like they're not even close to getting anywhere near like where I'm trying to get to, you know? And I just think it's a good reminder. Like if you want your life to mean something, and this is not just like with work, right? I'm just saying in general, like right now we're talking about a job, but like it's the same with relationships. It's the same with your health, right? Like we haven't even talked about health yet. I can't even tell you how many diets I've tried and all the different things I've done, like and experimented with, and what I'm doing right now. But that's like, if you want a life that's truly meaningful in any category of your life, it's like you have to be willing to take the risk, right? To like make the jump and iterate over and over again, and realize that like the first time you jump, you're not even close to where you want to be yet, you know?
Yeah, but you know what you're saying though is, if I could boil it down to a single word, and it's a word that most people are afraid of, right? And it's change. It's like people are afraid of change. I just see it. Like anything that is too different, like, and it's crazy because we've all heard it's almost cliche. Like some people would rather hold on to a crappy situation and the pain that they know than try something different. And I don't really understand it. And I don't think you understand it either, because you're a person that's just embraces that as a lifestyle, you know? And it's a good thing, because I'm with you. Like, I think you can't claim to be living like aligned with your heart's desire if you don't try stuff. Like if you just stick with the first job you got or the first opportunity you got, you're someone that is resisting change. You're accepting conditions versus trying to go out there and create the conditions that are going to lead to your real fulfillment. So,
well, and ultimately you've settled, right? With whatever aspect of life we're talking about, you've settled with where you're at.
Facts. Bottom line.
So, okay. When you mentioned change, this is what I was thinking was, when I was growing up, my parents got divorced when I was like 12, and we ended up moving, like, I'm trying to think, we moved probably like before I was 16, we probably moved like 5 times.
Okay.
And I think because it happened and I didn't have a say in the matter because I was a kid, like, and I went through it and I realized I got through it and everything was fine. And it was actually kind of fun starting over that many times. I think that was what prepared me for making all of these changes later. But I will say though, that there are other people who've been through the same situation and then they're resistant to change because of it. So I don't know what it is, right? Like maybe I'm just lucky in the sense that like something aligned in the first time there was that change, it felt good, right? Like something good came out of it. Maybe that I'm just lucky for that, like that happened. And then I kept experiencing that. And then, so then now that's the pattern I've created, that I look forward to change. And maybe for the people who respond that way, like maybe you didn't, right? Maybe like the first change they experienced, the first big change was a negative one. And so that was what was burned in their brain and what they associate with change. I don't know. But I will say from my experience, there were things that changed that were big changes that were outside of my control. And I think I got into that pattern of changing, you know?
Well, I think that's interesting because my parents divorced when I was 18, but they were on the rocks for probably 3-4 years before that. So
Okay.
we could see it kind of falling apart. Right.
Yeah.
And I like, on the one hand, I think that people choose to live the way that they want to live. So I view it. And if someone is not a change agent and someone does just sort of settle, my belief is that they're choosing that. But I
Sure.
do think that comes from life experience. And I think it starts in our earliest phases of life. Like that's when we have these experiences that have a dramatic impact on our view of the world, right? And through adolescence, like where you had this sort of upheaval in your life, I think the reason that you embraced it versus someone else that maybe recoiled from it is probably some stuff that happened even earlier in your life that just primed you for being someone that maybe got excited about that versus scared of that, you know?
Yeah.
So I'd say, you know, in that sense, it was fortunate for you because I mean, maybe not the divorce of your parents, but just the fact that you realize like, wow, this is really exciting, all this change. Like, let me just keep that going, you know?
Yeah.
And it sounds like you lived such a colorful life, much more than most, you know?
Well, this kind of leads to like what I said before about accepting yourself, because for a long time, oh, sorry, before I say this, I do want to say, because you said maybe beforehand, I think back to even when I was younger and I used to move the furniture around in my room all the time. Like every couple months I'd like rearrange it and like put the dresser over here and the bed over there. And so like, I don't know, maybe there's something to that, right? That was change in itself, or most people like wanted to just stay the same. I was like, you know, let's switch it up, you know? So who knows? And part of the reason why I say maybe I'm lucky is because I agree with you that like, I think we need to take responsibility, right? And be like, you know what? My life is different because I chose that reaction. Okay. But also like, I haven't lived other people's experience. And so I feel like I can't say like, well, you resisted change because you chose to resist it, even though that is probably how I feel. But I ultimately can't say.
It's not a fact. Yeah,
exactly. I can't say for sure because I haven't lived their experience, but I can say from my experience, I would agree with you. I feel like it was because I was like, well, this is kind of fun. This is kind of exciting.
But you know what?
Anyway.
But this is what I think, like, so in my coaching practice, really the core philosophy is that I like implore my clients, you got to take control of your thoughts and your actions. Like that's literally, and in fact, the only thing you can truly take control over is your thoughts, right? It's not even your actions, because what if your arm gets chopped off, or what if, you know, you become incapacitated or you get really sick? Like you don't have the choice of that. But so long as you have like sort of a free mind, you can choose how you're interpreting things. And so I believe that that's a core tenet to being successful, is you have to assume that control at some point. But as to where we're all left by our parents and by the experiences of our lives, I think that's really murky. We don't know what of those early childhood experiences or other just experiences of our lives, how have they affected our ability to realize the control that is our birthright, I believe. You know, because it sounds to me like if you and I were to have a talk about it, like we probably both believe in the concept of free will. I know that I do. I believe that was a gift from the creator, is like, hey, here's your little sliver of free will on top of all these other conditions that are going to impact your worldview. And so that's what I choose to believe, you know? And so I want people to take control of that little sliver that is their birthright, you know?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Well, this is the thing, right? If you believe in free will, and I mean, you know, we're all making decisions, it's kind of hard not to believe in that. Okay. So if you're making decisions in your life and that's the one thing that you have control over. It's like, what are you doing if you're just living mindlessly? Like, that's what makes us a human being. Like,
Yeah.
that's literally
That's
what
freedom.
makes us a human being over any animal that just acts out of instinct. It's like, bro, use it. You know what I mean? Like, use that free will, like make decisions, do what you want to do, follow what lights you up.
Yeah.
Okay.
That is freedom.
Yeah.
And you're right. That is the difference between an animal and us, right? That's really what that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah. So back to what we were saying before, because you were like, it seems like you lived a colorful life. Now, what's interesting is, and like I said, that's part of actually what led me to this idea of like truly accepting yourself, because for a really long time, I let other people make me feel bad because I was that type of person, right? Because I would jump from one thing to the next. And you were like, man, if something's not for you, like you need to drop it as fast as possible. And I was always around people who were like, oh, so you changed your mind again, huh?
Quitting again. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Oh, look, another thing you started and didn't finish. And not to call my mom out, but you're just like your dad, starting stuff and not finishing it, right?
Classic parental,
right? And it was like, I mean, but of course, my parents were divorced, right? So like, duh, right? But which, to be honest, see, this is the thing. This is the beauty of it, is that now as an adult, I'm like, I'm so glad that my dad is that person. And I believe that I inherited from him at like a 10x level, where I just am like, next thing. And I love it. Like, I'm so proud of it. But in the past, I let other people, and this is about accepting yourself and trusting yourself, right? So I let other people, again, they didn't make me feel this way. I let them make me feel this way.
Point that out.
Okay. Yep. I let them make me feel this way, feel guilt about when I did that. Now, I don't blame myself for that, because quite honestly, like that's how most of us are raised. Like you kind of get feedback from the people around you. But I really, like, over time, I've learned not to not trust other people, but to trust yourself over other people, because other people are always going to have an opinion about what you're doing. And I promise you, like, their life is 100% different from yours. Even if it looks similar, they're on a different path. They want different things. Their experience has been different. And so for you, it's like, you have to trust, like, innately what is inside you and listen to it. And for me, it took me, right, I'm sitting here thinking now, just even from when I told you my second job was at Starbucks, I only worked there for like 3 months because I couldn't do it anymore. I ended up doing something else. And I remember, because somebody who worked there helped get me the job. People are like, well, but they helped you get the job. Like, how's that going to make them look? And blah, right? All of this pressure. And I'm just like, man, like, it's not surprising. And I don't blame any of those people. But it all boils down to, you have to trust yourself. And when I say accept yourself, I don't mean, when I say accept yourself, I don't mean just be okay with it. When I say accept yourself, I mean fucking lean into it. You get what I'm saying?
Love it. Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? Like, now I am not the person who is like hesitant. When something's not for me, I'm like, sorry, I said I was going to do this, but I'm done. Like, I'm moving on because I know this isn't for me. And I'm not saying that's how other people should be. What I'm saying is, whatever that is for you, whatever your thing is, lean hard into it.
I couldn't agree more. And I'll tell you something, as a parent, right? And like, you know, I'm older than you, but I think there's a lot of similarities here. And my parents certainly had expectations of me, and they had ways of influencing me and making me think some of the same things you just said, like, oh, well, so-and-so put their neck out for you, so that means you should, like, what, exchange more of your valuable life energy so that they don't look bad. Like, that's terrible advice, but these are the things we hear, right?
Yeah.
So what I've tried to do with my kids is really encourage them to be independent and do what their heart is calling them to do. And
absolutely,
you know, both my kids, when they went off to university, I wrote them letters where I just said, like, look, this is your life. So even if I'm giving you the impression that I have certain expectations of you, or I want you to do certain things. I want you to resist the urge to give in to what you think I want. And I
Mhm.
want you to be independent and think, what do you want? Because that's how you're going to be happy. That's how you're going to be happy. And so I couldn't agree more, Giuliano. And this is also why, like, what you said is so, like, it aligns with what I said before, which is spend your time learning yourself and controlling your own thoughts
Mm.
and actions. That's your job. That's the job you've been put on this earth to do, is to be yourself and figure out what you're supposed to be doing. It's not to fix this problem or that problem or make this person or that person happy. That's not your job.
Yeah.
Your job is to figure yourself out, because when you do that, and when you take good care of yourself and you love yourself for who you are, well, now you become a better servant to everybody. You become a genuine article in the people's whose lives, are there. And the people that love you and befriend you and want to be a part of your life, they accept that,
Yes.
and it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. See, this is this is the part that I love about it, is the more you become, the more you're able to help other people. This is the
Literally.
part about it that just blows my mind, right? Because
It's shocking. Yeah.
because I know I was taught not to prioritize myself. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that came from either of my parents or whatever. I'm just saying that was how I felt, right? That it's like, put others ahead of yourself. Make sure, like, focus on helping other people. And this is the thing, is I don't discount that. Like, I actually love helping other people.
Yeah.
But the way that I can help people the most is by becoming 100% me. Because when I, like what you said, like discovering who you are, learning more about you, because the more you become, the greater impact you're able to have on other people. And so it's like, there's this duality to it where it's like, you are doing the thing that makes you happy, but like, you don't realize that, like, most people don't realize this, but the thing that makes you the happiest is the thing that allows you to help people the most. Like, you don't realize it yet, but it's there. And if you focus on it, like, oh, it's so hard because it seems like the opposite, right? When people are like, oh, all you care about is yourself, you're selfish. And you're like, yes, but also by me focusing on this actually helps way more people than if I was just prioritizing helping other people.
Well, and not to mention, I'll tell you something else. The biggest challenge you will have, and any person will have in going down this path, is that the people that are all around you, sometimes they get a bad rap. We say, oh, your friends and your family, they don't want you to change. And it's because, guess what? They know you for what you've always been, and they like that. That's why they're around, and they accept that. So you wanting to go and do something different is an extremely traumatic experience for them. So the best thing you can do is have grace with them. Like you said something so important, which is, certainly you want to listen to their inputs, but you certainly do not want to prioritize that over your own belief about what you are meant to be. And then you go down that path. And it doesn't matter how much it disrupts them. It doesn't matter how much it bothers them. That's not your responsibility. They're going to call you selfish. And what they mean by that is, you're changing into someone that I'm not comfortable with or familiar with, and I don't like that, which is actually selfish. What they should be saying is, are you happy? And if you're happy, that makes me happy. But hey, we're all complicated beings. And, we got to, again, give people grace that are around you. But do your thing,
See, to me, when I think about somebody reacting like that, I totally agree with you. And I actually think that when someone reacts that way, that's like your sign that you're helping them. Yeah. And I say that because first of all, like, they're going to have to deal with it, right? Because you're just going to go live your life anyway. So they're going to have to grow from it. But what I mean is that, like, I believe, like, when someone reacts like that, it's because you're challenging their idea of what life is about, right? Reality. Because if they felt the same way as you, they would just be 100% supportive. But because they're not, that means that the way they view life is different than the way you view it. And if I can say so, I would say that it is a less expansive version of life that they see, right? Because most people, when they're going through change and they're like going for what they want, they're expanding, right? And so I can only assume that somebody who is not supportive, they're not in that mode.
Yes.
Their perspective
Agreed.
is not an expansive one, but one that is very like singular, right? And
Constrained.
very,
Yeah.
yes, exactly, exactly. And by you being expansive, like that causes them to realize where they're at, right? Like maybe, like remember we were saying before about people settling. It's like if you're expanding and you're like pushing forward in that expansion, that shines a light on their lack of expansion. And
Dude,
that can only make somebody upset.
but you really have a way of like getting to the heart of the matter on some of these things, because that is such a good way to put it. Like what you're doing is you're showing someone else what's possible for you, which they didn't think was possible for them, hence why they didn't do it. But
Exactly.
now they're seeing that it is possible for them, not meaning following your exact path, but
Yeah.
your growth.
Yes.
And they go, well, he's growing at this age or with this skill set or based on my perception of him.
Yeah.
So maybe I could grow in that way that I want to. But again, growth is, you think back to when do we grow the most, right? It's as children through adolescence, we have growing pains, right? Kids get sore legs and all. It's a very difficult time, right?
Yeah.
Because growth is pain. You know, if you want to grow in the gym, you have to put yourself through pain.
Yeah.
And so guess what? Most people don't want to expose themselves to that if they don't have to. And you doing it shines a light on the fact that they're not, you know, and that's very uncomfortable. Man.
Yeah.
So you hit it on the head.
Well, and the goal with that is that if it makes them uncomfortable, this is why I say you're helping them, because no matter what, like even if they never do anything with it, you were the person that showed them that, right? Like you're one of the people that showed them what their life could be, like that they do have more potential than they're currently tapping into, you know? And so like anytime somebody judges you for doing anything expansive, it's like, you can know, you're like, wow, I was able to help that person by showing them what was possible, because clearly that's the only reason I can think of why they're judging me, you know?
100%. And you know what, like what I found, and I'm sure you found the same thing, is there's some people in your life that will support your growth. There's fewer people that will like actively not support your growth, but there's a lot of people in the more indifferent category, I would call it, where they're not necessarily supportive. And that's a growth opportunity for you as well. And like what I found is like you becoming the best you need to rely on yourself. You need to trust yourself. You need to believe in yourself, and you've got to get to a point where you don't need the support of others in order to realize your potential. If you get it, that's a beautiful bonus, but you don't need it. And that's why this journey is very individualistic, and it can be very lonely, because not everyone's going to throw up a hand and say, you know, I'm proud of you. You know, you're doing that thing. I see you doing it. Like, you know, we don't get a lot of those messages, right? And it's okay. It's made me stronger, you know, so much stronger.
Yeah. Well, I love that too, because so there's a couple things. First of all, when you're looking at that, like that end goal of not needing other people's support, I feel like someone can misinterpret and be like, oh, okay, so I'm just going to remind myself of that I don't need other people's support. But I think that comes from experience, right? That comes from like doing it and like over and over again, realizing, wait a second, I don't actually need anybody else's support. What I need is to support myself. And this seems so weird to even say, because it's like, well, support yourself. That means that you're different from yourself, right? You can't support the same thing, but that's like we all have a voice in our head, right? And like some of us are telling us ourselves like bad stuff and negative stuff. I remember like years ago, this is like the beginning of my personal growth journey. It was like, would you talk to somebody else the way you talk to yourself in your head? And it was like, oh, damn. Like that was kind of what made me realize. I was like, oh man, I've been really like talking bad to myself, you know? And eventually you get to a point. I think this is why I say I think it's through experience. It's through like just taking action, doing things, and learning as you go. Like I don't think you just learn this overnight, but it's learning as you go, that you have to be the one to be like, I'm awesome. That was amazing. Great job. And not wait to hear it from other people, because ultimately, like other people, it's not their job. Their job is to do it with themselves. That's it.
That's it.
Right? And that's the point, is that it's your job. It is your job to tell yourself, good job. It is your job to tell yourself, that was amazing. And as soon as you get to that point where you can do that, I think that's when you realize, oh, wait a second. I don't need other people to support me. It's great when they do, like you said, but I don't need it, because no matter what anybody else says around me, I support me. I tell me that I'm good. I tell me that I deserve that I should keep going. And I applaud myself.
Yeah. I'm in my corner.
Yes. Yes.
And I'll tell you, that it extends out. Like, these lessons, though, are valuable in so many ways in life. Like, a big one right now, and it's interesting to hear you say that you're married, and, like, I think the institution of marriage and long-term relationships right now is under a little bit of duress, like, in society, right? There's this feeling like maybe it's an unrealistic standard or expectation. And I'll tell you, it is, if you're going to put your contentment and peace and happiness in the hands of someone else. But what you do when you get together with a life partner, and the vows are there for a reason, through good, what do they say? Sickness and health, through good times and bad and all that. Like, your job is to contribute to the sanctity of the marriage and not hoist a whole bunch of expectations on your spouse. Yeah. Like, if you're relying on them to satisfy you, like, this is a bit of a fool's errand, right?
Yeah.
You've got to learn to be happy in your own skin and how you're living, and articulate what you want in the relationship, certainly. And there are limits, of course. If someone is being extremely neglectful or whatever, then that's one thing. But generally speaking, if things are not going great in your relationship, you want to consider, what do I need to put into this thing? Not I start victimizing and pointing the finger at my spouse. And that's how I don't know about you, but I heard about these people married 50, 60, 70 years. And I thought to myself, my goodness, the amount of sacrifice and just commitment that takes, as someone that's been in a marriage for 25 years now, almost 26, it's a thing, man, like, you gotta persevere, like, but you got to take care of yourself.
Listen,
that's your obligation.
Yeah. Listen, I'm telling you, I could, and I am going to write an entire book on marriage. Okay. But what I will say is that at the core of what you said, I'm completely in agreement. It's the same, like, it's exactly what we were just talking about. Like, when it comes to being in a relationship with someone, again, barring extreme circumstances with abuse and things like that. Okay. Barring those extreme circumstances, if you are able to take responsibility for the entire relationship and both people are doing that, you have zero problems. Like, and I say zero, near zero, right? Yeah. Like, I look at this, like I said, I could write a whole book on this, but for me, there's a lot of contributing factors. I would say, like, even movies, right? They, like, romanticize this, like, passion and, like, anger, and you have these fights and then you come back together and blah, blah, right? Like, that's, like, how you think relationships are. If that's all you know, right? Like, watching TV, right? And watching movies, and your parents are divorced. Like, what else are you supposed to think relationships are, right? Other than what you're seeing. And what I've found is that, like, remember earlier when I was saying there's parts of my life that are better than I could have even imagined. In big part, I was talking about my marriage. Like, 10 years ago, if you had asked me what is your dream marriage look like, I could not have even told you what it is now. Like, I couldn't even fathom it.
Yeah, you couldn't articulate that.
Yeah. And I think part of it comes down to what we were saying before about taking responsibility. Like, I feel like I lost my train of thought. I forget what I was saying before I mentioned the marriage. No, it's not your fault. It's for when I said, oh, remember before I was talking about marriage. About passion and all this stuff, right? What I found is that actually, like, our marriage being as amazing as it is, for me, comes from not being so emotional, right? It comes from not being like what you see. It comes from not being like, oh, it's this, like, crazy thing where, like, I'm going to be with you until I die. Like, so a lot of people don't agree with me on this. Okay. But I truly believe my wife and I will never get divorced. And the reason is because we both admit, and I said this to my wife before we got married. I was like, I'm giving you permission now when we're happy that if we ever get to a point where I am not supportive and in every way, right? And you're not happy, I'm giving you permission now while we are happy to divorce me at that point.
Yeah.
And because of that, because I know divorce is on the table, what that means to me is that I have to show up as the best version of myself in this marriage. And as a person, I have to show up as the best version of me. And so by me taking responsibility, right, I'm taking responsibility for that. It's not like, oh, you left me, whatever. No. It's my job. And she does the same, right? She views it the same. It's my job to make this a great marriage. And then I'm saying the same thing. I just don't think we're ever going to get divorced because we both realize that it's an option. And as soon as you do, you now have something to lose. Like, we don't throw it in each other's faces, right? It's not like, no. But this is the funny part.
But it's on the table.
We don't argue. There. We don't argue. Yeah. Like, I would never threaten her with divorce because we literally never argue.
Yeah.
Like, I'm looking back and we've been married, because at yours, you're probably like, well, how long have you been married? We got married in 2018. Okay. Yeah. So I'm not saying, it's like we've been married like decades, but I feel like we've been married long enough that if we were in the honeymoon phase still, that would be pretty epic. It'd be a pretty epic honeymoon phase. But that's been my experience so far when it comes to marriage. And I think it really, it's the same thing that we're talking about with life, right? Like, if you are expecting other people to validate you, if you're expecting other people to support you, if you're expecting to know where to go based on what other people tell you, you're screwed. That's not life. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing in a relationship. It's like, if you're expecting the other person to fill your needs, if you're expecting the other person to make you feel good, if you're expecting the other person to process your emotions, it's like, what else could you possibly expect out of this relationship other than failure?
Yeah. Yeah, it's facts. And you know what? Yeah, peace is a beautiful thing to strive for in a relationship. And I find, early on, one thing that, and I wouldn't want to make any blanket statements, but women enjoy the emotional experience of a relationship. And sometimes that means ups and downs. And it's actually an enjoyable ride at both ends of the spectrum because, and sometimes for men as well. But I think once you move through that honeymoon phase of going through that, really the goal that you want is peace. And that's what we have in our family. And I really see it with the kids because, on a day like yesterday, where we're football fans in this house, so we'll sit together in a room and just watch the games. And it's just a very peaceful experience. And there's no fighting and there's no bickering and there's no, sort of, what do they call it? There's no passive aggressiveness or anything like that. It's just peaceful, and it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. See, this is, I want to clear up something I said before, because I think people be like, you're lying. It's not that we never argue, but this is the thing. When you ask somebody, if I say this, relationships are, what do people always say? Relationships are
work or challenge or
hard, challenge, work. I don't feel that
effort.
Way.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I don't feel that way. And that's my point. I'm not saying we've never gotten into a disagreement. What I'm saying is the overall description of our marriage, I would never say it's work. I would never say it's hard. I would never even say it's a challenge. It's not. And I think part of where it comes from is taking responsibility for my end of it. And part of that is saying one of the things we read the book about love languages before we got married. And so as soon as I knew what her love languages were, I was just like, okay, well, I'm just going to do all that then. Exactly. And that's all. I mean, that's not all I've done, right? But that's part of it, right? If I'm taking responsibility for the whole marriage, meaning my job is to be the best version of me and to help fill her needs as much as I can, even though she doesn't expect it, right? Because that's what I was saying before. You can't expect it from your partner. But if both of you don't expect it from each other, but you take responsibility and you do that
freely.
Yes. And you're like, I am taking responsibility for the entire marriage myself. And you're both doing that. It just works. I don't know
Yeah.
how else to say it other than it just works. I don't expect it, but it comes. And it's the same with her. She doesn't expect it, but it comes.
But that's a really mature way to have a relationship. And I think for a lot of people, relationships get started out of things like passion and whatnot. And it's not necessarily out of like a symbiosis. And, you know, that's why I think like before you really settle down, you want to have conversations about life philosophy. You want to have conversations about, you know, how you feel about certain things. And not to say that you can't grow together and grow apart when you're with someone for a long period of time, not in general, but just in different aspects of your person and like how you relate with one another. But if you're generally on the same page with a philosophy, if you generally agree to a framework of making a relationship work like that, and you both give each other the fact that, look, if I'm not holding up my end of the bargain, you know, I would expect that you would want to walk away. That's healthy to me. That's a healthy framework.
Exactly.
That can persist, you know?
Yeah. And you know what the funny thing is? I think so, especially in sales, you can understand this. The incentives of the salesperson should align with the incentives of the company. You want your salesperson to be doing activities that contribute to the growth of the company. Okay.
Yes.
For me, it's the exact same thing when it comes to marriage. The incentives should be aligned. And what a lot of people aim for.
It's a great word, alignment. Yes.
Listen, what a lot of people aim for, and I don't blame them because I've did the same thing. Okay. But I'm just saying it. I am not aiming for a long marriage. I'm aiming for a good marriage. And because of that, it will be long.
Yeah.
And I think that is, to me, I feel like it's the biggest mistake is looking at the side effect and aiming for that as the goal, because you miss the middle part, which causes that side effect. It's simply a side effect. That's all it is. You have a great relationship and it will last long. But what ends up happening, see, I told you, man, I can write a whole book on this. My wife and I, we are married and we're not going to get divorced, but we both were like, if we could go back, I wouldn't get married. We've changed our perspective on it because I'm not committing to you for the rest of my life. I'm committing to like making this a great relationship. And yeah, we'll probably be together for the rest of our life because of that, because we're committed to making it a good relationship. But it's like, to commit to being together until you die, it's the wrong goal. It's the wrong, like you understand what I'm saying, right?
I do. Well, and it's because like, you know, like what you said is that I love is that a good marriage happens today. A long marriage happens after 20 years, 40 years, 60 years, 80 years, but a good marriage happens today.
Yeah.
So if you focus on a good marriage, you're going to focus on the actions that you need to do today to create that. And then, like you said, the byproduct is going to be these other things. But I tend to be with, I mean, the one thing I think that I like about the framework of marriage, or like the institution of marriage, is it does give both parties this like, hey, work it out, figure out how you're going to do it, because you sort of you tied yourselves together a little bit, like legally here, you know. But I don't think I do think you're right.
We have a contract.
Yeah, like there is. It shouldn't have to be that way, you know. And I think it might change over time. But that's why anytime I hear of a younger person, you know, than me at least, that has taken this leap, I think, okay, this is a serious person. You know, this is a person that, you know, is prepared, isn't afraid to commit. Like you might bounce around a lot in other areas of your life, Giuliano, but you know, this was something where you knew it was the right thing to bet on. You know, I like that.
You know, I heard this quote a couple years ago, and it really, like, to me, I wrote it down and I remind myself of it like probably once a week. And what it said is that love isn't about staring at each other. It's about staring off together in the same direction. And so I thought of that earlier when you were talking about, you know, having these conversations like ahead of time about your philosophy on life, because I do feel, see, this is my thing. I actually believe, and my wife knows this, so this is not like news to her, that like I could have a great marriage with anybody. It's not just because I'm married to her, but it's the same with her, right? Mm-hmm. And it's because both of us are committed to being the best versions of ourselves. Like we're always growing and learning. And if that's who you are with, like if you're with somebody who's always wants to be better and is like trying to grow and reading and like trying different things and exploring, it's like it's only inevitable if you are the same way that you guys will be happy. Like how could
That
you not be?
is going to be there. That's
right. Yeah. It's funny too. My wife and I, remember I said we're big on social media. We actually met through Instagram, and
no kidding.
Yeah. So long story short, we had mutual friends so we basically had like friend groups that were overlapping, but we had never met before. And I was living in a different state at the time. And because I was living in a different state, but also because we knew we had overlapping friend groups, there was kind of like, oh, you know this person? Oh yeah, he talks about you. Oh yeah, this and that. We kind of felt like, there was already a connection there. But because we were in another state, we weren't together physically for like a long time. I mean, a long time meaning like you start dating someone a month before you see them in person is like a big deal, right? So we were talking for like probably a month and a half before we ever met in person. And so like, what are you going to do on the phone with someone that you've never met in person? Like, you're just going to talk about stuff. You're going to talk about life. You're going to talk about like the important things. It's not just like, what's up? What are you doing? Exactly. Right. And so I personally, I feel like that was like the foundation for us to have the relationship that we have now, was because we had like really big conversations before we were ever in the same room together.
Yeah. Yeah. And see, I agree with that, because again, like I had relationships when I was younger, I'm sure you did as well, where it was more passion based. You meet someone, you're attracted to them. And so it's more of a physical thing, and it's like less of it. And then you realize later, it's like, we actually don't jive philosophically or intellectually. Yes. And it's like, now it's like a messy situation to extract yourself from that. And there's, it's different when you can realize we're on the same page in all of these other ways, and then, there's still the physical attraction. So it isn't clouding everything up front,
See, this is the thing about the physical attraction. We both admitted to each other later that we like weren't exactly each other's type. Like if it was just like right off the bat, like, it was not exactly right. I was not like, it's not that she wasn't attracted to me or vice versa. It was more just like, you're just not like the typical type I would have gone for. Right. Exactly. If someone said, describe the ideal person, it wouldn't have been me, and same with her. And I, like I said, I attribute it, but I mean, obviously there's attraction there. Like we wouldn't be married if there wasn't.
Certainly.
But what I'm saying is that like, I think that us being able to get to know each other without being in the same room and being distracted by the physical aspect of it, is, in my opinion, like part of the big foundation for us having a successful relationship now.
Well, and not to mention like we've all had this experience, right? Where you see someone that's attractive, but within 10 or 15 minutes of interacting with them, they appear less attractive. And we've all seen people, that are maybe don't fit that mold. But once you interact with them, you're like, this person is just getting more attractive, like every minute,
Dude, that's a huge takeaway. For someone listening right now, like that's a huge takeaway, because it is a big deal. It works in both directions. Just like you've been attracted to someone, and after they talk, you're like, I'm less attracted to them. The same can be true in the opposite direction.
And I've really seen it with guys, like guys, because I think these days a lot of guys are really concerned that they don't measure up, right? I'm not tall enough, or I don't have the jawline, or I can't grow a great beard, or like whatever, right? I'm balding, like whatever the case is. And it's like, that stuff only matters in the first 2 minutes, because I've seen it where I've met lots of guys and I've just thought to myself, man, the more I get to know this guy, he's just so charismatic, and he's just got a presence to him. And he's just like, I'd love for this guy to meet like my sister, or like this guy is great. And it's like, that's what really matters. It's your character, and it's how you carry yourself that ultimately is your attractiveness level. It's just not that basic physical stuff that, no successful relationship was ever built on two people that just had a physical attraction to each other. It's like no chance.
Exactly.
No
exactly.
Chance.
Okay. I know we're kind of getting close to having to wrap up here. So do you want to share anything with people who are listening about like next steps with you or anything? Because I know we haven't even got into it. But please,
but
like whatever you want to say, just say it.
You did tell me that this was going to be a fun and winding conversation.
Yes.
And so I was really looking forward to it. I've loved it. And yeah, you know what? This is, something that I'd like to hit people with.
Sure.
So there's a lot of different ways that you can learn and improve in your life. And if you're someone that is a personal development oriented person, the way that I've always been, you're probably doing a lot of these things. Even if you're listening to this podcast, you're curious, you're interested, you're looking for life lessons. But I found for me, the reason that I got into coaching is because I had such dramatic positive effects of working with coaches. And I worked with my first coach in 2017, that I paid for. And I've paid for plenty of programs and courses and books, obviously. And I listen to all the podcasts. But working with a coach can really supercharge your results. And what I do, is I live my program on my Instagram. So I just post every single day about what my program is, and I can boil it down to 5 core tenets for people.
Okay.
So number 1, I recommend an early morning wake up time. Doesn't need to be as early as me. I wake up very early, but it's just a little earlier than you're comfortable with. And we do this to carve out a bit of time for you in the morning. And what do we do with that time? Well, number 1 is a reflection. And I mentioned that earlier. So we've got a regret reflection, and there's some other reflections we do first thing in the morning. Then there's a morning workout. Then we stick to a certain diet, and then we avoid drugs and alcohol and other vices. So that's my program. And if you follow this program, you will go through a difficult introductory period. Yes. However, you get to a point where we can give you the body of your dreams. We can give you that control, because so long as you're addicted to vices, even, in a not strong way, but so long as you're living your life for drinks on the weekend or pizza on Saturday, you are beholden to something that is outside of you. And what I want for your listeners, I want you to be in control of yourself. It's not to say that you can't enjoy those things, but it needs to be under your terms. So my program is about helping with that. And if you're interested, I don't even have like an offer that I pull people. I just say, follow me on Instagram.
Yeah.
See if you vibe with me.
Yes.
See if you like what the program that I'm living. Interact with me there. Questions. I post every single day. I'm on my story all day long. You can learn about me, and perhaps I can help you. So if you're looking to clean up your life, take control of yourself, and get better results in any area of life, I'd love for people to follow me.
Awesome. And if they want to follow you on Instagram, how do they find you?
Yeah, so it's instagram.com/my name, Josh Flower. No S, so it's just Josh Flower and then the number 1. So Instagram.com,
Josh Flower 1.
Josh Flower 1. You can see, exactly how I'm doing it there. And yeah, it's a lifestyle, man. I'm telling you, it's a lifestyle that's worked for me. As a guy that had all the vices, I had them all. And I tried to scratch those itches, and I'll tell you, it goes away for a minute and then the itch comes back and it never goes away. So I hate to tell people, but if you really want to overcome the challenges in your life and be content in the moment, you must be in control of yourself. That's what my program's all about.
I love it. I love it. For anyone listening too, I like to remind people I've got a book coming out soon. I promise I'm going to make it happen soon. It's the same title as the podcast, How to Be a Person. And eventually they'll be able to have access to it
too, right?
Yeah, I'm telling you, man, I got multiple books coming. I promise. My website is howtobeaperson.co, and everything, like, people can connect on social media through there, and everything as it comes is going to be available there too. So, Josh, this has been an awesome conversation, man.
So fun.
I'm seriously so grateful for you coming on. Thank you so much, man.
Oh, my pleasure. And hey, I know you're just getting the wheels turning again on this thing, but if you ever want me to come back, this has been one of the most enjoyable, free-flowing conversations I've been on. You're the best, man. I really like you, and I'm going to follow you on socials as well.
Thanks.
So I'll come back anytime. All right.
Yeah, dude, I'm telling you, I already was like, there were like 5 things that you said in the end there. I was like, I want to talk about that.
Yeah.
So we definitely got to do another one.
It might have to be a series,
Yeah, exactly. All right, man. I appreciate you.
Excellent. Thanks, Juliana.
Thanks for being here. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review or share it with someone who'd appreciate it. For everything I have to offer, visit howtobeaperson.co.